Hi everyone, today's November 10th, 2018, and this is a Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is GreenRanger.
And I'm DeckTech.
Um,
We've got some minor doom dogs right from the beginning.
Yeah, when you just put them away. So this week, we didn't have much going on at all for most of the week. DeckTech has some exciting news, but we were going around with this Duel Quest, finishing up the Trudge event, and finally yesterday we got news of a whole new box, which is dropping out tomorrow. Konami just dropped the bomb on us with a whole new box coming up, and of course there's news with the upcoming Kaiba Cup and also the Inglorious Bastion event. But this episode will just be going over the new box, Blackstorm Rising. So DeckTech, where are you this week? What happened?
Yeah, so I am actually playing Duel Links again.
Nice. Welcome back.
Which is nice, yeah, thank you. I continue my trend from last week where I was playing the Blue Eyes deck. I've made it up to Legend, which is fairly early, in the month still. We were talking about it before where this month is a bit truncated because presumably a good amount of my playtime will be going to the KC Cup once that comes. And then also I'm going out of town for about a week for Thanksgiving. So it's unclear how much time I'll actually get to play for the rest of the month. But I do feel like I have plenty of time, hopefully, to be able to make it to King of Games again for the first time in a while now. But basically, once I hit Legend, I hit like a wall of Masked Heroes decks. And that's... If they play it correctly, that can be a little bit of a tough matchup, especially since more builds are now running Mirror Wall, I've noticed. And so my things that affect face-down traps don't work as well. So I kind of had to tweak my deck a little bit. I'm not sure if I want to play this or if I want to just tweak it a little bit and mess with it still. It still definitely feels like a tier 2 deck, but it also feels good enough if I kind of stick with it, maybe adapt it a little bit or kind of just hit a lucky streak because the deck is very kind of boom or bust sometimes, and sometimes you just hit a lucky streak and beat a bunch of people before they even get to play anything. So, I don't know. Oh, and then the last thing, very important thing, for community relations purposes. I was at BlizzCon, as I mentioned last week, and I ran into Decade there, which was really cool. I got a picture with him. He's a nice guy. He, very understanding, and I'm not sure if he expected to get recognized there, so I don't know, but he handled it well. I just missed Gia. She had just gone into the bathroom, and I didn't want to be the weirdo who's like, hey, can we wait till she comes out of the bathroom to get a picture with her too? So, whatever. So there you go. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's nice it was on plan too. That's the best part.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I guess, I don't know. For me, it feels more it seems like it'd be cooler for him, at least in my opinion, that someone recognized him outside of I don't know, a signing or a competition where he has
a Yu-Gi-Oh event on
the back of his shirt. Yeah, or a Yu-Gi-Oh event just at all. So it seems like I get more credit for actually knowing who he is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah.
What about you? Where are you at?
Yeah. So less exciting news, but I'm almost at Legend 2. I was at a game where I got eliminated from the promotion match, or I got knocked out of the promotion match or whatever, but I'm almost at Legend 2 with my own build of vampires, and I just haven't gotten enough games in for whatever reason. I had a weird week where I took 2 days off and playing Warframe and things like that, so that's been seeping into my game playing time, but I am winning most of my games. I am beating Masked Heroes decently, and I would say I adjusted my play style of playing vampires. I have been... A lot of people, when they play vampires, they always try to get Vampire Grace up, but I always try to get Vampire Grimson out, or whatever reason. I've just adjusted my play style for whatever reason, and that has led to me to a lot of victories. I don't know why, but that's all I gotta say.
All right, a lot of questions, and but some results coming from it, so that's cool. I got to a promo match as well, and then I don't know, the last two promo matches, the one to get me into Legend, and then the one from Legend 1 to Legend 2, they were both rough, where I ended up losing that, and then like just going on a total downward spiral, losing like 6 games in a row. And so we compared win rates, and you're doing much better than I am in terms of win rate. I think we're at around the same part in the ladder, and probably like similar amounts of game time played, since most of my games only last like one quick turn or two.
Yeah.
But I've actually gotten a lot more games in. So I think it feels like Vampires is a much more solid deck to me than is Blue Eyes.
Yeah. I was gonna say something just now, but I forgot. Wow, short-term memory is a bad thing. Oh. um. So we're gonna talk about this week in esports. We have a lot to talk about this week with the new cards. So we're gonna talk about two events, one that has happened and one that will happen. The first one is Duel Links Meta Weekly 45. This happened on Tuesday, and the top four are actually a lot more diverse. There's different decks everywhere you see in the top four, so we definitely like that. But Masked Heroes and Vampires are still the top two in full deck representation, and the top 32 as well.
Yeah. But the top four that we're about to go over just has a bunch of really cool stuff. Some stuff that we've seen, but maybe not for a little bit or not in high quantities, and then some other stuff that just kind of feels new, which is pretty cool.
All right, first place, Wayne Kenoff, or if you like to say it faster, Wankin' Off, is
Yeah.
Sealed Tombs, X-Sabers, Balanced Noble Knights. So the X-Sabers appears to be like the best tuner, synchro-based deck we see in tournaments. I think that has to do with the card Tore Apart being offered now. If you didn't notice, Tore Apart allows the monster to be immune to traps every single turn. It's like a continuous anti-magic arrows. So it's a very good card. And Balanced Noble Knights, this is a little different from the one I played. Well, first of all, they have the full set of cards. That helps. And they have the card Double Cyclone, and instead of the 3 Wild Tornadoes or Typhoons, which I was running. And they have one fewer Glory, and they cut out the card entirely, the last chapter of Noble Knights. So they have an extra equip spell, which is good because they often lose by losing all their equip spells, and it's a different version. I like it.
Yeah, I really like this X-Saber deck. It feels like a kind of control, like a combo control deck, which is pretty cool. I've not played it, but it seems like it has some good tools. It definitely requires you to get these SRs, though, the X-Saber SRs, and of course the
3
UR
URs.
tuner.
Yeah.
So it's a little pricey, and I haven't played Noble Knights either, so I don't really know a ton about how either of these work, but they seem fun.
Yep. Noble Knights is fun. I could say that myself.
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Mike, Blue Eyes, and Restart Spellbooks. So this is the version you went full in depth last week. Told us everything we needed to know about Blue Eyes, so it's not a surprise we have Lila and Destructotron, one bingo machine, so that's good for the free-to-play considerations. And then the Restart Spellbooks, they don't have as many cards as they used to, but it looks pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think the one bingo machine doesn't actually help the free-to-play because you still want the 3 Spirit of White. So you still have to buy the
second
structure
one.
thing twice. The Lila, I recently switched to her as well. I had previously had it as, I forget what it's called, the psychic guy that when you tribute him, you destroy something. Yeah, thank you, the ace. I recently switched to it as well because she just seems kind of a little better now that the Masked Heroes are running the Mirror Wall, because Destructotron does not do that well against it. And so I kind of like her there. We're seeing a couple more with Paleozoic Canadia, which I guess falls into the category of just good cards that you would want to run. and maybe it can help you kind of tribute out a Blue Eyes if one gets stuck in your hand. Um, you'll notice that this build has zero tuners, which is kind of interesting also. So it's a little bit different. Um, I'm not sure if it's correct. I don't really get the Paleozoic Canadias as much, and I think having some tuner abilities makes some sense, but that's okay. He
I talked
obviously
about
did
it.
very well.
Yeah, I talked about it before. The Paleozoic Canadia is like number two, the second most played trap card now after Wall of D, I think, and it's because it can disrupt at any step. Like Floodgate
Hmm.
just does that beginning summon, but whenever they activate an effect, you could Paleozoic Canadia at any point of the game of the turn. I mean, so that's why it's just very flexible and it brings back that monster, which is very important. So we're seeing it everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The flexibility definitely helps a lot. Um, the lack of tuner is interesting because like I mentioned last week, I barely ever used the tuner. But I don't know. I kind of just like having the option to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of every once in a while, it's kind of like your winning play. I just recently learned that I was playing the Yubel matchup wrong, for instance, because I'm supposed to be getting out the Stardust Dragon,
Oh right.
which
Yes.
I hadn't paid nearly enough attention to because it's pretty obvious that that works against Yubel when you actually read it. So, for instance, that's one benefit that you don't get if you don't have the tuners. And this also doesn't even have enemy controller to steal someone else's tuners, which is
Hey.
just like a fringe case that you sometimes want to be aware of if you're running econ in your deck. So,
Yep.
anyway,
Just those synchro cards are just there for a show. No
yeah,
reason.
just to mess with people, maybe.
Third place, a very patient player, Bandit, Vampires, and Balance, Gem Knights. I was gonna say Stone Knights. Um, Bandit Vampires has a card that you don't see typically, Skull Conductor, which is 2,500 for 4 stars with the field, which is pretty good, but it dies after the battle phase. And the point of it is to special summon either Grace or Vamp in this deck. That's the only point of the card. And then the Gem Knight deck apparently functions through a first turn kill. I don't know how it works, but it's all explained here.
Yeah, I played some Gem Knights. This is a little bit of a weird list. For one, balance doesn't actually work. Um,
That's six of everything.
well, yeah, but since he has a 30 card deck and you don't draw 5 cards, I don't think it actually guarantees you to get a spell and a trap, right?
There's that 25% like variability chance.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. Back when I was running Gem Knights, we were the kind of the skill that you would definitely use would be Destiny Draw. But perhaps times have changed because I know Masked Heroes, Blue Eyes, and Vamps can all one turn kill you if you don't do anything on the first turn. So maybe trying to take 2,000 is a risk that he felt he couldn't take. Um, this is also a list that runs Block Golem, which is not what I ran, but it is what I think maybe Pro Benchwarmer, one of our Twitter friends, and I'm sorry if it wasn't you, Benchy, or I'm sorry to whoever it was if it wasn't Benchy, has been running Block Golem, and they liked it. So that's something, that's interesting. But when you run the Thunder guy, then you have to be careful of that as well. So anyway, Gem Knights is really fun. I really liked that archetype when I was playing it. And I definitely recommend that people check it out when they get a chance. It's more powerful than people give it credit for. It is fairly reliant on Grasslick Screener, but it's a fun, powerful deck, so you should definitely try it.
And third place, Darcio, Balance, Masked Heroes, Sealed Tombs, Vampires. This is pretty much the most conventional list of the top four, but you've got two of the Celestials in the Masked Heroes deck. Sometimes people run one, but there's a lot of really good. The traps are all really good in this deck, and I did face someone on the ladder who ran 3 Galaxy Cyclones and 3 Mass Change as his card. So Galaxy Cyclone is kind of locked in as a card for the deck, and the Vampire list. It's what you expect from this Vampire deck. I mean, mine looks similar. I guess it's just how many Graces you want. what back row you want. This person chose mirror wall. I do not use mirror wall, so yeah, it's just picking what traps you have, I guess.
Yeah, I think mirror walls made a bit of a comeback, at least what I saw in early Legend when I got there, and it kind of makes sense because Hey True Nade and Destructotron are on the rise a little bit, at least in that specific meta. And so I saw a lot more mirror walls when I was playing, and it was hurting me, and that's why I had to switch up my deck a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of run one of everything, so I run like a widespread ruin, a wall of D, but no mirror walls. So yeah, maybe I'll see.
Yeah, the one of everything is interesting because it kind of makes your opponent have to play around more things because they're like, oh, does he have another copy of that? Does he run, two of those or whatever? And it's also really interesting, especially in open decklist tournaments, insofar as we have any of those, because it forces your opponent to, before you play anything, it forces your opponent to play around one of all of these 5 different things you have. So we see a bit of that in Hearthstone tournaments when you run like a secret deck and you have like 4 different secrets and it's like, oh, which one is it? So I don't know. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that gamesmanship.
You're giving me PTSD with Secret Paladin.
I'm sorry about that. I really like that deck.
Oh man,
I was.
It's like every game you like the card. You like the decks are annoying as hell. Just who
I like
you
the
are.
deck. Yeah. Well, okay, got me.
Right. So the thing that we were talking to some Japanese players on Twitter, and we found an upcoming D League 3 that's run by Tate King, and we had MMBA Flying Jim who asked for a translator, and we got a translator rep My Crew VGC, so thank you very much for them in helping us understand what this tournament's about. But each player brings 3 unique deck lists with a different archetype, character, and duel skill. And if you don't recall, that's kind of what the official Konami tournament did. I think they had 5. It was like that, right?
Yeah, they had 5 because they had 2 of them were the special
Legendary
rules ones.
Yeah. Right. And then it's a best of 3. The first round, you could use any of your 3 decks, but then the second and third round are tricky. Well, first of all, the winning deck cannot be used again, but the loser of round 1 selects which character the winner has to use for round 2, and then this is repeated for round 3 if needed. That's a stipulation we've never seen before, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah, it seems pretty cool. You are essentially so. Yeah, you're picking your next opponent's or your next match. Interesting
Character,
little format.
Yeah.
I guess just their character. There's also this last point about 3 minutes for sideboard.
Yeah.
So that's after you pick because you're not playing a winning deck list again. So is the sideboard just for the person who loses to switch up, or can either player sideboard in quotation marks before any match? So when your opponent picks which character you're using, you can sideboard.
I think it's the latter.
Sideboard.
I think it's the latter. Yeah.
Interesting. It's definitely a slightly different format than we've seen before, and that I've seen in any card game, of which I've played a decent amount. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of switches things around. It's the type of thing that is a little complicated, but now that we have a much more engaged player base in card games, a lot more people are playing card games these days. It's the type of thing that you can make happen, and especially if you're playing at an event where, like, you have admins who can make sure that people are doing it right, as opposed to just like if it's the official format that people have to figure out when they're playing on their own. But if you have it like with some sort of structure, admins, or just kind of built into the game at some point, then it's easy because the game will, or the admins will just help you do it. So I'm totally down with seeing new and different formats be done, especially ones that perhaps wouldn't have been available before, when you'd have to kind of try to rely on people at home figuring out how to make it work when they might not be able to.
Yeah, and they definitely have a lot of the translations mentioned player communication, so that's just like using all your channels to communicate what you're doing, and yeah, definitely very interested to see where this goes and see who wins.
Yeah, the player communication, we've seen that that's just like on Discord or whatever. You have to be in this official player channel, and then the admins there will help answer your questions. And I'm pretty sure I haven't competed in one, but you did, so you can confirm the Duel Links meta. They do it that way, right?
Yeah, we were just talking on Smash GG. There was a chat window. Yeah, there was like a thing to submit deck lists too, I think.
Yeah, and then I've done a couple Hearthstone Challenger things, and that's how they do it as well, where you just you have to be in the specific channel, and if you have questions, you can call an admin there. So
right, yeah.
It makes sense. That's kind of how technology works these days, since we're not obviously flying people all over the world for these small events and stuff.
All right. Now we're going to get to the meat of this episode, which is Blackstorm Rising, coming tomorrow. Yeah. We didn't really expect it. I mean, people knew for days when they were looking at leaks and stuff, but we didn't really expect it. But as mentioned, they are going to a different signer monster to headline each box, and this is the Crow Hogan one with the Black Wind Dragon. So that's the main theme of this box. And there's a bunch of new archetypes, new cards for a bunch of older ones, but overall a very mixed set. So we are going to go over the cards.
Alrighty.
So the Blackwing Dragon we definitely talked about when we went over Crow Hogan. Now you could get 3 copies, but it's probably not worth it. It's just the card that does it prevents burn damage, and then it inflicts burn damage. And a lot of that setup has to be self-done, I think. Like a lot of the self-damaging burn. Because every time you take the effect damage, it doesn't say it's from your opponent, so you wouldn't expect everyone to be running a Weevil deck out there nowadays, so it's not a good card, yeah.
Yeah, you have to you have to build your deck around it and to abuse it, because the meta is not such, like you said, there's not enough Weevil decks that by playing this, they just can't play their deck. And in other decks where there might be like a tiny bit of effect damage that isn't core to the deck, they would just not play it when you have this guy out. So you have to do it to yourself, which is a little bit harder. And I agree, this doesn't seem worth it now, but maybe at some point, now that you can get a playset, you might.
And that could be a thing we just say Weevil decks. They're all running Kinetic Soldier now, so that's not even effect damage. It's just from the Lava Golem. Like it's kind of like a anachronistic term saying Weevil deck of effect damage.
Yeah, a couple of kind of a lot of this set actually feels to me anachronistic. We'll talk about a couple other cards that are coming up that are just kind of throwbacks, and a couple of the archetypes that are supported in this are also kind of throwbacks. So I don't know. It's an interesting set.
The next card is a new card, Blackwing Bora the Spear, 4-star 1700 winged beast. If you control a Blackwing monster other than Bora the Spear, you can special summon this from your hand. It has piercing. So, I guess it is a UR because it cheats itself out. 1700 with piercing is not too remarkable, but it's pretty much like a Drill Dark. Because a Drill Dark's a 1600 with piercing, and then it could special summon something from your hand. So, that's basically what it is. And one thing that's an advantage to this card is you could synchro summon right away with the monsters instead of attacking. So, you get your tuner, and then you get this guy, and then you synchro.
Got him.
It's very unremarkable for being a UR. Like, it's just, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so you said the benefit of this guy is you can synchro summon right away. The benefit of Drill Dart is that you get to use Mask Change and Anki. So it's...
Yeah, that's better, I think.
I think that's a better upside, but yeah.
Reptilian Vasky. So this is a whole new archetype. This is an 8-star 2600 Zero Reptile. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. It cannot be special summoned except by tributing two face-up monsters with 0 attack from anywhere on the field. Once per turn, you can select and destroy one face-up monster your opponent controls. There could only be one Reptilian Vasky each turn. On the field. So it's kind of like Lava Golem in that you could tribute your opponent's monsters, but it's more like you have to make your opponent's monsters attack 0, which there are actually many ways to do it with this set. Or you could do your own. You could use Doomsday Fires of Doomsday, and then you get 2/0/0 tokens, and you could bring this card out. So there are, at first, just looking at this card seems impossible, but they have a bunch of tools to make things 0/0, and then you could just tribute them for this card.
There's also scapegoat tokens, except whatever it's called in this game.
Right.
The version we have. Since this is a special summon, you can still do that, I think.
Yeah, those tokens are always a special summon.
Yeah. So I kind of like this one. It's an interesting card. If you can use one of those cards to set your opponent's guys to 0, then you're killing 3 of their things on the turn you play this, which is a big tempo swing.
Right.
That's kind of course, the perfect setup, but I like it. It's an interesting card.
I actually like this archetype the most of the whole box. I think they have the most, like, they're the easiest to pull off, I think. And they're pretty strong, because some of them just lock the monster and they can't switch to defense mode. So they do a lot of stuff. Yeah, I like this archetype.
Yeah, I haven't checked out all of it yet. I didn't get a chance to, as we normally do for the audience. We kind of split up the box a little bit, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about what these guys do.
Breaker the Magical Warrior, we should all know what this card does, because it killed Weevil a million times. But it's a 4-star 1600 spellcaster. If this card is normal summoned, place 1 spell counter on it. It can only have 1 spell counter, that's important. This card gains 300 attack for each spell counter. You can remove the spell counter and destroy 1 spell or trap. It doesn't have to be set or face up, doesn't matter. Destroy it. So, this is like a spell counter card. You use the Citadel of Endymion or Spell Power Grasp and just control the back row, I guess.
Yeah, back when I played the physical TCG, this guy was just a really strong utility card that you would just put into your decks. And it particularly worked well because we had the BLS was kind of big at the time, but it's also just like a solid beat stick as far as normal summons go, with a big upside of you can get rid of your opponent back row. A lot of the most powerful back row cards can only activate like when someone's attacking, or only have an effect when someone's attacking in the case of like Mirror Wall. So you can do this ahead of time and clear that out. So this card was good enough that it was previously only available through the creator's skill, and now it's here. And so that's kind of something notable. I don't know how much of just playing it we'll have in this game at this stage, but it's definitely the type of card that I'm going to have my eyes on, because if I end up buying this box, if I end up opening it, like, this is just the type of card that I like, where it's just like a solid kind of card that you might be able to slot in at some point. Works well with, I guess, like Silent Magicians and stuff too, because it's a spellcaster.
Dark Horus, this is a reprint card. Not much to say. We never saw the card ever, and it's really slow. It brings back a level 4 dark monster each turn. I mean, after every spell is activated during your opponent's main phase. There's not much to say about this card. It's not anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the main problem is that they still get to resolve their spell, which is going to be better than whatever you're bringing back. Usually, they're just going to be econing this Dark Horus or something, and then, not a good card. I shouldn't say not a good card. It's not a good enough card to see play, and so that's why we haven't seen it.
Yeah. Dragunity Knight Vajrayana. 6-star Synchro Dragon. It requires a Dragon Tuner and a non-tuner Winged Beast. 1900-1200. When this card is Synchro summoned, you can target 1 level 3 or lower Dragon-type Dragunity monster in your graveyard, equip it to this card. Once per turn, you can send 1 equip card equipped to this card to the send that equipped card to the graveyard, double this card's attack until the end phase.
Yeah, so this was one of the archetypes that I was looking at this set, and basically the archetype revolves around these Dragunities are kind of like the, what are they called? I wrote it down here.
Inzectors?
Yeah, it does kind of feel like Inzectors, but I was getting more of a Crystal Beast / Unity monster thing, where a lot of them will get sent instead of to the graveyard, or after the graveyard, they'll get sent as equip cards instead, and then you can kind of do stuff with them as equip cards. And but there is definitely an Exector feel to them as well, where a couple of them you can just kind of use to cheat out other ones as equipping them to them. So it's kind of a combo of all three of those things, and then it's kind of brought into this new era of the synchro summoning, where they have that aspect to them as well. And this seems like one of the payoff cards. Basically, the sending an equip card is really easy because of to the graveyard is really easy for this, because that's what this archetype does. You add equip cards, and then as long as this guy has a semi-decent attack, which it already starts with a half-decent attack, there's a couple other ways you can buff it first, and then you have a big old beefy guy to attack in. It's only for your turn, and so it kind of feels like a OTK type thing or a finisher. So it might be a little memey. You have to clear up the back row first or something. So I'm not exactly sure how powerful it will be. We'll have to see exactly how the deck is built. It feels like it might not have a lot of room for extra cards to clear the back row or something like that. So I'm not sure how safe it will be to use, but there it is. That's one of your payoff monsters.
Black Whirlwind, continuous spell. When a Blackwing monster is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can add one Blackwing monster from your deck to your hand with less attack than that monster. I don't really know how much a card like this would be played. All of their cards have really low attack, typically. There is synergy with a card called Breeze the Zephyr, in that when you tutor it, you could special summon it right away, so there you go. Even if you do run this card, I don't see you running 3 of this. Like, 3 of a continuous spell. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, with the way that our game works, you would have your back row would be clogged up if you did that. Yeah, I don't even think you would even want 3, because you would just deck yourself out super fast. I don't know. Interesting, yeah. I guess.
Not that exciting for me. Cards of Consonance. Discard 1 Dragon-type tuner monster with 1,000 or less attack. Draw 2 cards. Simple enough.
Yeah, so there's a couple cards in the Drag Unity, archetype in this set they were getting that this works with. So it's kind of just keep your engine going, put more things in the graveyard, which is pretty much just what that archetype wants, is to just cycle through its deck, put things in the graveyard, bring them back, and then use them as resources there. So this helps with that. But I also think it might help with the Blue Eyes archetype that exists now. There's specifically, we talked about last week, the Snipe Hunter build, where you run the Blue Eyes tuner that gets you a Blue Eyes when it goes to the graveyard. And so with this, it's you get 2 cards away to get 3 cards, so it's just a lot of card advantage from that. And it's actually even pictured on the card, I just noticed, right there. So maybe that's how they want you to use it.
I really think this card art is hilarious for some reason. I don't know why. Something with the background and the guy with gloved hands is like your deck.
Yeah, yeah. I guess
it's like they're out of like a disco or something.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. It's Master Hand from Smash, right?
Oh. Well, I mean,
it's not a white glove, but
it's not a white glove. Yeah, it's a brown glove. Oh well, yeah. There you go. This one, Sakuretsu Armor. Everyone should know this card. It's a trap card. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster and destroy that target. One of the best cards back in the day. It's kind of like another Widespread Ruin, but less... I'm not sure if less flexible, but it's a different thing. And it triggers only in the battle phase, so it could get removed by Hatrune and things like that. So, there you go.
Yeah, it feels like it's mostly a better Widespread Ruin, because you get to pick what you want to hit. But sometimes that's worse, like you said, because in different situations it won't work as well. Widespread Ruin doesn't target, whereas this does. So certain cards are immune to this. So it's just another card that we expect we'll see a lot of play after the set comes out, because it's just one of those really strong trap cards that can be put into pretty much any deck. And depending on which set you ended up buying, you'll just use. We've gotten to the point where there's enough really good trap cards to disrupt play that you
Yeah.
just use whichever one you have, and they can mostly substitute for each other fairly well. And only like the very top level players who have play sets of everything are the ones who are like making important decisions as to which ones they're going to run.
It still doesn't get through vampires though, because the samurai skull is the one you hit with, and then they remove it, and then you could get like your Gozuki out of your deck or something. So, samurai skull is still very good against this card. It's good for vampires. Yeah.
You would target a different thing, right? You wouldn't hit the samurai skull.
People do it. They don't know it's a second ability. Like people on the ladder just don't know it. Yeah, so that happens.
Yeah,
but people in tournaments should know
lesson.
that. Yeah. Phantom Griffin, 4-star 2000 0. That's it. So it's a vanilla winged beast, which you wouldn't really want, but it's here.
Yeah, I mean, Unga Bunga decks. You faced one fairly high up on the ladder.
Yeah, wow. That was crazy.
So, it's still value. Obviously, this card would have been broken like a year ago, but the game's changed since then. And so we're not, it might see some play, it might not, but there it is. If you need a 2000 attacker, Winged Beast.
It says this card fights with harpies over hunting grounds. That's a reference right there.
That sure is.
Blackwing Shura the Blue Flame, 4-star 1800 1200. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can special summon one Blackwing with 1500 attack or less from your deck, but its effects are negated. So what you're trying to do is get your tuner out, and its tuner's effects are not negated, so you could still do your tune. But you have to wait till the next turn because you can't do it during the battle phase. They Swarm. This one has pretty good attack for the archetype. I don't know if they're going to succeed, but this looks like one of the better ones.
Yeah. That's interesting that the tuner aspect is not an effect. It's just like a characteristic. And that kind of makes sense based on where they've put it in the card text.
Right.
But I never really considered that before. So that's kind of cool. Also, I guess it makes sense because we have normal tuners. So, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read these guys?
Another wrinkle into the deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, might as well read the next three.
All right. Drag Unity Ducks. Win level 4 Winged Beast effect monster. It is a 1500 1000, gains 200 attack for each Drag Unity card you control. When this card is normal summoned, you can target one level 3 or lower Dragon Drag Unity monster in your graveyard and equip it to this card. So the buff is not just for Drag Unity monsters you control or Drag Unity cards that are acting as monsters, but it's any Drag Unity card, which includes all the ones that are in your equip, your spell and trap zone. So in theory, this guy could get 6 buffs. I don't think there's a field spell.
Himself, right?
Yes, yeah, he counts himself.
Yeah.
For each one. So he counts himself, and then you can get 2 other monsters out, and then you can have 3 in the graveyard, in the spell trap zone. And so, that's a beefy guy. That's a 4-star 2700 if you have that whole setup. So that's something. I think at this point in the game, beefy guy, like just a plain beefy guy, we were talking about the 2000 attacker, it isn't quite good enough, and especially if you need to like set it up. The good thing is that this is like the minimum values acceptable on this guy, because you summon him and he's immediately a 1700 and likely a 1900 because he kind of sets himself up to be a 1900. So I think the downside isn't that big, but the upside isn't quite as big as it looks like it is either. So this is kind of like a decent card, but one that makes sense in the archetype and will likely see play as just like a beat stick that makes sense in the archetype. The next one, Drag Unity Phalanx. I've seen that word a lot in my life and never learned how to say it. Uh, it
Phalanx?
is a phalanx. Okay, wind level 2 dragon tuner. So that dragon tuner level 2, that's all relevant to a couple of the other cards in the archetype. Um, Once per turn, while this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon this equipped card. It's only a 500, 1100 defense, so obviously you're not doing that for like purposes of contesting the board with him. You're doing it so you can cheat him out through cards like Ducks or a couple other cards in the archetype where you can equip it to something and then use his effect to summon him like from that position into the board, and then use that to get out a synchro summon. And there's a couple synchro summons. We've already seen one. There's another one in the SR bunch. So this just kind of makes sense as part of the archetype because the synchros are some of your stronger cards. So this is just to get your synchro engine going.
Let me interrupt for a second. Aside from this being a tuner, isn't this just basically reading the effect of a union card? Except it's faster?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the faster is kind of, it's pretty relevant. I think the whole archetype kind of works together for that. And that's why I was saying it felt like a union card, union archetype as well as kind of some of the other stuff.
Unions are just completely obsolete, and then they just made more things of it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another reason why this feels a little bit like a throwback set. There's a couple things that are direct throwbacks, and then there's a couple things that are kind of like references to other things, it feels like. And this is one of those. Third card, Harpy Queen. Wind level 4, Winged Beast. 1900 attack, 1200 defense. You can discard this card to the graveyard to add one Harpy's Hunting Ground from your deck to your hand. This card's name becomes Harpy Lady while it is on the field or in the graveyard. So Harpy's Hunting Ground, I might as well take this now as well. It is a field spell that is in this set. We get it now. It used to only be a skill for Mai, and now we finally get to play it, so that's why that card makes sense, because you would want to pull it from your deck. And it reads, all winged beast type monsters gain 200 attack and defense. When any Harpy Lady or Harpy Lady sisters are normal or special summoned, the player who conducted the summon targets one spell or trap card on the field and destroys that target. So people who've been playing for a long time, like we have, already know this, but that's a mandatory. And so sometimes you will have to destroy your own Harpy's Hunting Ground or, your own cards. Sometimes you want to do that, though, because there's a couple cards that when they are destroyed, you gain, some sort of value, like Wild Tornado? Dusk Tornado?
Wild Tornado.
Wild Tornado. So, there's advantages to this. This used to be one of the most dominant archetypes in the game. For that meta, it was certainly the most dominant. So this is part of that throwback feel. It's really cool to finally have it. The queen seems incredibly powerful in the archetype. I'm just not quite sure if the archetype's good enough anymore, because it kind of, you're really summoning one, maybe two Harpy Ladies a turn. And then so it's like, and then your payoff is that you're playing smaller guys, but you get to destroy their back row. And so, I don't know. I guess it kind of becomes more of a control deck instead of like a tempo control like it was before. I'm not sold that that's good enough anymore.
They have that hysteric party card, right? That could just wipe out a back row, maybe? Or is that just too much setup? Yeah.
No, I think that card's pretty good and interesting. It might be enough to take it over. I have that in the notable card, so we could talk about that more later at the end. But I think I'm going to try it out because I like the archetype, but I wouldn't expect it to be. I don't expect it to be a tier 1 thing. I don't really expect to see a lot of it in the meta tournaments or anything like that.
Right. Okay, yeah, that's understandable. Ujinji Crane, 4-star light. 1600, 300 winged beast. During damage calculation in either player's turn, if a beast warrior Bujin monster you control battles an opponent's monster, send this card from your hand to the graveyard. The attack of the monster becomes double its original attack during damage calculation only. So I played a lot of Boojins, and the three Boojin cards that they give us in this set all function completely differently because they're hand activators. Usually, Boojins are hidden in the graveyard, and then they trigger their effects as combat tricks, just to banish themselves and be a combat trick or something. And this one comes from the hand, so it's completely different. And there's going to be a one-turn kill component to them, and this contributes to that. So there you go.
Cool. Yeah, it seems powerful. Activate from hand effects are really strong because there's not a lot of ways to interact with them, even if you know to interact with them, and you often don't know to interact with them because it's coming from the hand, so you don't see it coming always unless you're really good or you know the deck that you're facing very well inside and out and stuff. So seems good.
Yeah, like 99% of the time it's a Karibo.
Right, yeah.
Gigantic Cephalotus, reprint card, 4-star plant of 1850. It gains 200 attack each time a plant is sent from the field to the graveyard. It's a beginner level card for any deck. They could just run something with Aramiges or something. Just a beginner level card, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. 1850 attack that sometimes gets to be beefier. It's the type of card, like you said, beginner level, where it fits into that same category that we were talking about before, where if it's just a beefy guy, that's not quite good enough anymore for the most part in this game. And so at like high levels, it won't see play, but it's solid for like those kind of middle to lower level decks and metas.
Yeah, and if some plant thing comes up, there's a bunch of plant cards with the Akiza, Overdoom Line or whatever. I don't know. There's a bunch of plant things. This could be in the running if their strategy is just to, hey, True Nade, anti-magic arrows, hit stuff. So maybe.
Yeah, and we also have like Raging Mad Plants.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and that card is just really strong if you have like any decent plant monsters. You guys might remember it's a little bit old, but it's a quick play. All plant type monsters you control, or you currently control, weird phrasing, gain 300 attack for each plant type monster currently in your graveyard until the end of phase. So, if you have a plant deck, this affects multiple plants. So if you just have one in your graveyard, it's like already good. If you have multiple in your graveyard, you're just getting huge beefy plants. So like you said, if you can get like a anti-magic arrows or a Hey True Nade, and then you could just play a couple beefy guys, it felt like plants were just not quite good enough to play in that way. Obviously that was around the same time that they were doing pretty well with some other means of playing plants, but maybe we can just get giant mad raging plants.
Yeah. Means that shall not be mentioned on this episode.
Especially because I just continually forget what they're called.
Oh, I thought it was intentional.
It was not. Well, it was, but the reason why was because I forgot what they were called.
Yeah. Okay. We're not going to mention it. Archetype that shall not be named.
Yeah.
Alright. Next card is a Bird with a Shotgun, Black-Winged Armed Dragon, 6-star, 2300 Synchro. You acquire a Black-Winged Tuner and a non-tuner monster. If it attacks a defense monster, it gains 500 attack and inflicts piercing. So it's 2800 with piercing. Really, with Synchro cards, you can't really complain about how bad they are, but it's just an addition for your Synchro deck for Blackwings. It's better than the guy on the front cover. So
yeah, are they the same? No, that guy's a level 8, so this is a level 6.
This is even better.
Yeah.
The Bird with a Shotgun. What more can you want?
I mean, really, that's all it comes down to me, because this is just some of the best art, and so you run this just because. Obviously, it's limited to Blackwing because it requires a Blackwing tuner, so the rest of us are going to just have to go with only 4 slots in our extra deck, because you obviously need this guy in there.
Yep, for sure. Alright, you take the next guy.
Alright, the next one, Drag Unity Knight, Gay Dirg. It is a level 6 Wind Dragon Synchro, requires 1 Dragon Tuner and 1 non-tuner Winged Beast. So the Drag Unities are kind of, their synchros are fairly limited. It's the same as the other one. It pretty much requires you to run Drag Unities. I'm sure that was intentional. And this guy is a 2400 attacker, 800 defense, so obviously pretty low defense. The effect is once per turn you can add 1 level 4 lower dragon or winged beast monster from your deck to your hand, and then discard 1 dragon or winged beast monster. So this guy has fairly solid stats as far as synchros go, and the effect I think is probably more important for the archetype because it's kind of your engine. It gets you the ones you specifically want in your hand, and then it puts other ones that you specifically want in your graveyard into your graveyard so that you can then, summon them either as equip cards or special summon them through some of the other cards that you got, presumably, the one you just picked up. And so this seems like a really good engine for the deck. I think if this deck exists, this will probably be a part of it. It seems like kind of how you kind of keep the train going. And that's kind of all I have to say about this guy.
Cool. And so you talked about Harpy's Hunting Ground already. Soul Release is another reprint card. So we're seeing all these reprint cards come back. 5 cards in the graveyard, banish them from either graveyard. It's like a side deck card for tournaments. Obviously, you see a lot of Graveyard Resurrections, but they're not in every single deck, so that's why you don't have this card in every single deck. It's not quick play either. I already have 3 of these for some reason, so
yeah,
I'm gonna get 5 and 6 of these too, probably.
Yeah, it's gonna be like I have Battle Ox, I think.
Oh yeah.
I have 6 of those, so never lucky. Yeah, so this, like you said, it's a very sideboard card unless the meta just shifts dramatically. There are some main deck hate cards like this, but mostly you would just run Sealed Tombs if you really wanted to prevent graveyard manipulation, which some people have. It kind of works. So I guess taking up a slot in your deck or multiple slots in your deck is a bigger penalty than giving up your skill. And that makes sense to me because card advantage is very important in card games. And as is tempo, and this kind of kills both. So,
alright, so we're going to gloss over the main archetypes that are in this box. The Black Wings are here. Well, they were here with Crow Hogan already, but we are getting more of the cards. A card like Tornado the Reverse Wind. It's a situational resurrection on your Black Wind tuner. So you could get a tuner back from the graveyard, and then you could synchro summon. So that's the point of this card. They have 3 other cards that just get cheated out. So there's Gladius the Midnight Sun. It's a 3-star winged beast. It special summons when you have another Blackwing on the field that is not Gladius the Midnight Sun. So it gets cheated out. Gust the Back Blast. If you control no cards, you can special summon this from your hand. So another card with a different situation. 2-star. These cards all have super weak stats. Gets cheated out. Harmattan the Dust. 2-star. If you control another Black Wing other than this one, you can special summon this from your hand. So it's the same effect as Gladius the Midnight Sun. This card I have to talk about though. This could be situational, win the game. Blackwing Kogarashi the Wanderer, 6-star tuner, that's notable, 2300, 1600. When a face-up Blackwing monster you controlled is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this from your hand. When a monster is synchro summoned using this card as a synchro material, the opponent of this card's owner cannot activate cards or effects. Does that mean they can't even play a card for the rest of the game? I think that's what it means.
I don't think that's what that means. I think that's how it reads, but I think it's you can't activate something in response to it.
Response to it.
That's how I would read that. It's not well written because usually they say in response or till the end of turn or something.
Best part is the wiki just does it says it doesn't explain it. Like they have no explanation.
Oh, great. I guess we'll learn when when the card comes out. We'll see what they mean because it's kind of like they teach you this in law school and whatever. It's a rule of construction just of the English language is when you sometimes say something and then later omit it, the implication is that it doesn't apply, right? So because they sometimes say until end of turn or when this is summoned or in response to, then the fact that they don't say that for this card implies that none of those three apply, and that's why you get to the conclusion like for the rest of the game. But that just seems absurd to me, so I don't think that's the answer, which is a different rule of construction. If something's absurd, you kind of try to find a different meaning for it.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty funny. I guess we'll see which of those options it is.
When we hit King of Games, we could try to play this card and see what happens. Let's see what else we got. Breeze the Zephyr. This is a tuner that can get cheated out with anytime you tutor it out. So it's a 3-star tuner that comes out for free, which is nice. Mistral the Silver Shield is a 2-star tuner. We already have this card in the game. Let's see. I want to talk about a Brohalos. Actually, let's talk about the tuner. Blackwing Silverwind the Ascended 2800 tuner. This is the first tuner that requires a full board, which sucks. It requires a tuner and then a Blackwing tuner and then 2 other monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, you can target up to 2 face-up monsters on the field with defense lower than this card's attack and destroy them. You cannot conduct your battle phase during the turn. You activate this effect. During each of your opponent's turns, the first Blackwing monster you control that will be destroyed by battle, it's not destroyed. So this is kind of the boss monster. You destroy 2 monsters on the field, which is great. But it requires a full board. So there it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the first one that we've seen that requires 2 non-tuner monsters. But I agree that kind of sucks because it's really hard to set it up that way. And it can be just too expensive to do that. We also had like implied ones that required 2 or more when we had
the castle probably.
Basically like 9 and 10 star guys where it's like you very frequently don't have a way to get out that many stars worth of monsters, and then the tuners are mostly low level guys. So I don't know, but cool. Are we on?
One last card.
Okay.
A Brohalos the Mega Quake. 7-star 2600 1800 cannot be special summoned. This card cannot destroy monsters by battle. If this card just battles a monster, after damage calculation, return that monster to the hand. Once per turn during your main phase, you can have this card lose 1,000 attack. If you do, return all cards in your opponent's spell and trap zone to the hand. So it has that Hey True Nate ability, but you're stuck with a 2-star 1600. So that's what it is.
Yeah. Not the worst.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. So, talking a little bit more about the drag unities. We already talked about what they do generally speaking. There's a couple more in the rares and ends. We were saying before we started recording, I didn't really get the archetype until I got to the rares and ends. Then it was like, okay, I see what's happening here, how it's supposed to work. I think that it works better with cards like Release, or I think it could work well with cards like Release, Restraint Wave, Storm, similar things where you can take even more advantage of the fact that you're adding a bunch of guys to your spell and trap zone pretty regularly, because it seems like a lot of these cards are doing more of that. So let's find them. A couple that I want to point out include the first one is the Drag Unity Arma Miscellaneum Mistletoe. There we go. It's a level 6 Dragon Effect. It reads 2100, 1500 defense, and it reads, you can special summon this card from your hand by sending 1 face-up Drag Unity monster you control to the graveyard. When this card is normal or special summoned from the hand, you can select one Dragon-type Drag Unity monster in your graveyard and equip it to this card. So there's a lot of ways that you can get out Drag Unity monsters, and that means you can pretty easily cheat out this guy as a semi-free 2100 attacker, which is pretty solid. The next one I want to talk about is Drag Unity Atlas, which is a level 2 dragon tuner. 1000 attack, 800 defense, as you might expect from a level 2 tuner, not the strongest stats. And it reads, when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one Drag Unity monster from your hand, then equip it with this card. When this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped to a monster, select one card in the field and destroy it. So this is the one that feels a lot more like the Insectors, because you're using it to cheat out something else. And then that secondary effect seems really strong. This actually seems to me to be one of the stronger cards for the archetype, which is cool because it's just an R. And so this is one that would work really well with those cards like Release Restraint Wave or Storm or something, where you can destroy it when it's an equipped card, destroy their back row, and then also destroy their blocker, and then attack in with your 2100s and whatever that you just cheated out. So it seems like that's kind of how, if this archetype will work, then I think that might be how.
Looks just like a Psychic Ace.
Yes, yeah. Psychic Ace that kind of allows for a different set of cards to work with it. So that's kind of cool. We're just now seeing Psychic Ace see more play, so it makes sense that this would work as well. Next one is Drag Unity Knight Gay Bulge, which I'm a child, so I found that name hilarious. I tweeted about it, and someone pointed out that it is actually Irish, like folklore, and it means it's like referencing the deadly spear or something. So there you go. The more you know.
Well, bulge and spear kind of makes sense.
Sure, I guess. It's another synchro summon, 6-star, 2000 attack, 1100 defense. If this card attacks or is attacked during the damage step, you can remove from play just one, a winged beast type monster from your graveyard and have it gain the attack of that monster until the end phase. So one other thing that was pointed out when I was laughing at this name is that that's a pretty strong effect. Pretty good for, just getting in for a lot of extra damage. It helps you get over pretty much anything because it's a base of 2000 attack, and then it gains a bunch more, and can go for OTKs, can just protect itself from combat, so a lot of good value there, I think, especially since the archetype seems to be filling itself up with a lot of winged beast types that you can put into the grave. There's a couple other synchros that are worth mentioning as well. The next one is the Drag Unity Knight Trident, which is a level 7. Decent stats, 2400, 1700, and its effect is once per turn you can send up to 3 cards you control to the graveyard to look at your opponent's extra deck and send an equal number of cards from there to the graveyard. So in most decks this would be just like a huge cost, 3 cards, but I think that in this archetype it isn't as big of a cost because you have so many ways to bring things into play as equip cards and stuff, and so you can do that. If any sort of synchro deck becomes big, I could see this maybe becoming like a whoever gets out their Trident first gets to disrupt the opponent's side of the board, and then their game plan doesn't work and yours does. That could be, backbreaking right there. This also single-handedly kills masked heroes if you can get this out before they get their Enki, their first Enki, because then they have no Enkis. Of course, as they're currently built, they have a greater than 50% chance to essentially start the game with an Enki because they will have a mass change more than 50% of the time. But still, that's kind of cool. And the last one I want to point out is Drag Unity Knight Barca. which is just kind of a beefy guy. It's a level 8, and it's a 2000 attack, but when it's synchro summon, you can select any number of Drag Unity monsters in your graveyard and equip them to this card. It gains 300 for each one. So, 2,900 is decent. That's that's the size of the castle, usually. And so it's okay. It's also just another way, though, to refill your entire Drag Unity's your entire board, so that you can activate more of these effects where you send stuff from your board into the graveyard. Let's see. Are there any others I want to... Oh, there's a couple cards. So like Drag Unity Militum. Once it's a level 4, 1700, 1200, so acceptable stats. Winged Beast. But the real reason why you play it is because its effect is once per turn, you can select one Drag Unity card in your spell and trap card zone and then special summon it. So this is, like I said, another way that you can kind of move them around and cheat them out by using cool effects like that. There are a couple level 5 and 6 Drag Unities, which are decent. 2100, 2200, with effects that don't make like the biggest impact, but they're just kind of okay cards, which become better because you can cheat them out by cards like Militum. And so that might be one way that it goes as well. Drag Unity Corseska is a level 1 Dragon Tuner, so relevant for a couple of those cards you mentioned before. And when this effect can only be activated while this card is equipped to a monster. If the equipped monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can add one level 4 or lower monster from your deck to your hand with the same type and attribute as the monster this is equipped to, so it's kind of just a card generation engine. Sometimes you'll do that to kind of just keep your hand full and keep it going. And the last card I want to mention for this archetype is a continuous spell called Dragon Mastery. Each monster you control that is equipped with one or more Drag Unity monsters gains 500 attack. Once per turn, you can select one face-up monster you control and equip it with one Dragon-type Drag Unity monster from your hand. So again, it kind of keeps the engine going. It gives you a little bit of a buff. We only have 3 spell and trap zones in this version of the game, of course, so this card's effect is limited. I don't know if this is good enough to make the deck, but it's something to consider as well.
Cool. I'm going to talk about Reptilians. I think they're the most exciting archetype of this set. They revolve around 0 attack monsters, and you can think about a card called Zero Force. It's situational. We have 2 copies now, but basically when a card's banished from your side of the field, all face-up monsters have 0 attack, or your opponent controls has 0 attack. So that's something you could do. Reptilian Gardna, 4-star, 0/2000. When it's destroyed and sent to graveyard, add a Reptilian monster from your deck to your hand. This is the only tutor card they have, and itself has 0 attack for your strategies. Medusa, 6-star, 2200, 800. Send one card from your hand to the graveyard and select one face-up your monster your opponent controls. The attack of the monster becomes 0, and it cannot change its battle position. There's several things you could do. You could cheat out the UR Vasky, or there's another card that holds up the monster, they survive, and you keep hitting into a 0 attacker that can't change its battle position, so that's something they could do. So very interesting to see if this one tribute monster makes it to the game. Reptilian Viper. This is the tuner, 0/0. When this card's normal summoned, you can select and take control of one face-up monster with 0 attack your opponent controls. So after you've done the manipulation of changing them to 0 attack, you steal them. So that's what this guy's for. And of course, he's the only tuner. Which leads me into their synchro summon, Reptilian Hydra, 6-star, 2100, 1500. Requires a Reptilian tuner and a non-tuner. When this card is synchro summoned, destroy all face-up monsters with 0 attack your opponent controls. Draw 1 card for each monster destroyed. Very good. Especially if you hit a Wall of D or Zero Force, something to make them have 0, and then you just blow them up and draw 2 cards or whatever.
Yeah, nice.
Reptilian Gorgon, less good, but it does the same thing. It's a 1400 attacker. Basically, after it attacks the monster, they have 0 attack, and then they can't change their battle position. Scylla, this card looks really ugly, but it's a 4-star 1800. After this card destroys a monster with 0 attack by battle, you can special summon that monster from the graveyard to your side of the field in defense mode. No effects. So it's like the Vampire Crimson, where you get to steal their monster, and that does disrupt resurrection abilities, which is always good in this meta. Reptilian Spawn is basically a card that puts 2 0/0 tokens out, but you have to remove from play a monster from your graveyard, so that's the cost. And then you get this card out, and then you get your boss monster, Vasky, out. So that's something to consider. And then Reptilian Poison. This is the card that holds them up. No, this is not the one that holds them up. Activate only if you control a face-up Reptilian monster. Change one defense monster your opponent controls to face-up attack and reduce its attack to 0. So it appears this card can target a face-down defense position monster and then make it a 0 attack mode monster. And find the card that holds them up. Oh, here it is. Serpent Suppression. Trap card, face-up attack position monsters with 0 attack your opponent controls cannot be destroyed by battle with reptilian monsters. So, yeah. I think this is one of those sets that isn't expensive because they only have 1 UR and then they have all these cheap cards. So they might make a splash.
Yeah. I think you said set, but you're talking about specifically that like archetype within the set, right?
Yeah, they have 1 UR and no SRs.
Yeah. So that's nice. Do we want to quickly mention the other kind of smaller things?
Yeah. Glad Beasts. I'm not too excited about these cards, frankly. They do have this thing with Hoplomus and Spartacus. They work in a pair, so Glad Beasts always tagged out each other, and then you could bring anyone you want. This one requires a specific setup of Hoplomus into Spartacus. So that's new. It is a 4-star 2100 defender, which is nice, I guess. Gaudiaz is a contact fusion, which can become 2 monsters after you tag them out. So that's good. You substitute, you hit, and then you get 2 things, and then they could clear the board or something. Nice to have. Bujins, there's 2 new Bujinjis. Both activate from the hand. Raven is like Mishizuri, the card that destroys. If a Bujin is destroyed, you can destroy their card with this one. And Swallow is the one that gives it a 1-turn kill component, because they can attack twice. I think that's what it does. I lost track of all the cards, but
yeah, I've found it. During your main phase 1, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to target 1 Bujin monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. Other monsters cannot attack during the turn you activate this effect. So you have to go in early because you have to do it during your main phase. But it is still pretty cool effect.
right.
Sometimes you can get that OTK.
Right, the crane doubles the attack. That's the most important combo.
Right. Yeah.
There's a card called Big One Warrior I think the name's funny. Okay, other notable cards. Synchro Blast Wave. It's basically a hard removal card. If you control a Synchro monster, target 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy it. These cards are nice. These are like Psychokinesis. It's like 1-for-1 removal on any monster. Good for a dedicated Synchro deck.
Yeah, and it's only an R, so that's kind of cool.
Silver Wing. The spell. It's equip spell. Equipped to a level 8 or higher dragon synchro, twice per turn it cannot be destroyed by battle. If it would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy this card instead. So it's got like double protection, double on the battle, and then also an effect protection.
Yeah, it seems kind of cool. We still have our long-standing dislike of equip cards, but they're I guess this gives you some protection against the Sakuretsu armors that are going to be coming, against Widespread Ruin, against just attacking into like a Mirror Wall or a Wall of D, because it can't be destroyed by battle for that turn. You'd likely take a good amount of damage and then end up kind of dying to that anyway, but still, it's a decent card. It might see some play. I personally don't think so, because that list is pretty full, but it's something that some people will consider, and maybe, depending on how the meta shifts, it might.
Guard Mines is a trap card. Activate only when a card is activated with an effect that will destroy one monster you control. Negate that effect, destroy the card, and inflict 500 damage to your opponent. So this is like a counter trap to all those cards we mentioned just now, the Sakuretsu and Widespread Ruin, or even like a Vampire Hard Removal. You could destroy their field spell with this.
Yeah, that last one would actually be pretty solid. I like that.
There's too many hate cards coming.
Well, I think the Vamps are kind of gone down a little bit in popularity, so you're safe from that. The Glad Beasts are interesting because Glad Beasts has kind of gone up in popularity a little bit from what I've seen recently after the nerfs. So I'm not sure how much these new tools... It's weird because it came back without the new tools, and now we're getting new tools, and so we'll see if that makes it come back even more, or if they're just ignored because the version that people are playing now they like better. The last notable card was the one we talked about before that I put there, of Hysteric Party. Continuous Trap. Activate this card by discarding one card, and then the effect of the card is special summon as many copies of Harpy Lady as possible from your graveyard. When this face-up card leaves the field, destroy those monsters. So, as we mentioned, a couple non-Harpy Ladies are considered Harpy Ladies when they're in the graveyard, so they can be summoned as well. And then this can give you kind of just like a big burst of OTK, especially when paired with Harpy's Hunting Ground, because you can use it to clear their back row, and then you have a bunch of guys out, or gals, I guess. And they're, the decent-sized bodies. They can attack fairly well. You probably still need some sort of help to get through most boards, but it's a very bursty card. The last interesting point is that if you have Harpy's Hunting Ground out, sometimes you won't be able to play this, because sometimes you'll play this and then they'll come into play and then kill themselves, because you have to target with Harpy's Hunting Ground, and so you'll have to destroy your Hysteric Party. Or I wonder if you can you can kill your Harpy's Hunting Ground 3 times. That probably works, right? They all.
It's like a chain. Which one comes out first?
Well, I think they all come out, and then you pick targets for each of them. Yeah. And then they all resolve. So I think you can actually just kill your Harpy's Hunting Ground.
Imagine you have to destroy this card. Imagine you have to destroy this card, and then they all die.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of do that. You could have like multiple of this card, so you could just clear the board, and some fun stuff maybe, where you can do it like multiple times in a turn, intentionally kill them all.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like it. It's a good swing card. It might see some play.
Yeah, I like this card. That is it for the box. Let's move on to Duel Quest, which is a reskinned Duel-a-thon with Super Nintendo graphics. And we get one new card, Sandboff. It's a 1,000, 2,000. If it's face down defense and it gets destroyed by a card effect, it comes back as a 2,000, 1,000. That's never going to see me play.
Oh, baby. No.
So situation, it's crazy.
Yeah, this does not seem very good. I don't understand this event. I don't know why they decided to reskin. I agree that it's essentially a reskin of the Duel-a-thon. I don't know why they did it. It seems worse, in my opinion, in that the reskinned version of it takes up more time and makes less sense. I don't know. I think, yeah. What do you think?
I did make a new friend because of it, because sometimes you give things to random people, and someone added me as a friend.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I think that, and we might as well go into it as well. This next one, the nice feature, they added something where after a duel, you can, tell your opponent, you can send them a nice, which is just kind of like a thumbs up, I guess, and it tells them that they sent you one, and then you can. It tracks in your player stats how many of those you got. which is, I guess it's nice, because we had previously pretty much only had a report feature after a duel. So this is supposed to be the opposite of that. I think between the Nice and the Duel Quest, Konami is trying to kind of make you have connections with players. Maybe that cuts down on toxic behavior, but I didn't think that was a huge problem in this game. The biggest thing to me that seems weird is that there's no like chat with just like friends and stuff, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding something. And so like it seems like they're trying to cram a social aspect into this game when it's missing like the one most obvious thing you can do to add a social aspect.
When you're in the duel room, you can emote.
Okay. I guess there's that. Or you can both just like somehow end up in the same chat channel. I forget what they're even called because I muted it such a long time ago. But like, why wouldn't you just allow that to be a thing where you can message each other? We obviously have the capability in the game since we have the chat channels. So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. You can't do that in Pokemon either, now that I think about it. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah. I don't know. But does Pokemon have these other things like where you're requesting friends and you're sending each other nice and stuff?
You do the gifts, I think.
Okay. All right. I don't know. Seems weird to me, but I guess maybe it's not.
All right. Let's talk about this last thing, and that is the community showcase. And in lieu of the Duel School, we have a community showcase by Redditor Yannick, who got his or her 10th King of Games in the row. Free-to-play player. And they provided 5 key concepts of being good at Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Duel Links. One is knowing card economy / advantage, so that's like the +1 thing we talk about, like this card can remove 2 cards for the cost of 1, stuff like that. Knowing a good card from a bad card, and that's why DeckTech harps on the equip spells all the time, because there are always a penalty on this card advantage aspect. Mm-hmm. Play conservatively and cautiously. Always review decks, win rates, and probabilities. Understand opponents' decks, cards, and win conditions, and know how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works. All really good points. Some of it, just us being people who have played card games for a few years, we just know it's something that doesn't have to be said, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is its own game, which number 5, that's what it is. And of course, knowing the opponent's cards and win conditions, and knowing the meta itself for sure for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the meta is always important no matter what card game you're playing. It helps you play around the right stuff. It's particularly important in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there's like 10 million cards, so if you're trying, you like literally cannot consider every single card that it could be, because there's just way too many options and you wouldn't do anything because there's a card that exists that counters whatever possible play you would do. So you just have to know the meta, know the odds that it's a certain card, and make the optimal play based on that information instead of based on like some hypothetical world where every single card is playable and frequently used. And then the knowing how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works, that's of course important as well. Just for making the best plays, you have to understand how the rules work. And sometimes you can learn that on the fly, but you know, sometimes if you're in an important, like a promotion match or in a tournament or whatever, you don't want to be learning how the game works. Like, oh, I don't know what happens if I activate this card right now. That's a really bad feeling when you're in an important match. So if as much as you can learn that ahead of time, either by just playing and practicing playing a lot of games, or by, I don't know, sitting down and watching a really high-level player play the deck that you're running, or just like even sitting down and reading the rule book. That seems really boring and probably not how I would do it, but that's another way that you can also get better.
It was what I was doing during the promotion match when I faced the Buster Blader deck, and I was reading the cards during the game.
Yeah, and that feels bad. I mean, I've had to do that too. I've lost games because I didn't know how a rule worked and I misplayed, or I didn't know what a card did and I misplayed because of it. So it's definitely something that you can, you know, up your win rate based on just knowing both how the game works and how certain cards and archetypes work better.
And finally, I'll talk about point 2, play conservatively and cautiously. We talked about this before the show. I guess it depends what type of deck you're playing, obviously, and what opponent you're facing. But I I don't often, but I play by instinct more than I should, and that sometimes I hit into Drowning Mirror Force and it's like, oh well. But I do a lot of stuff with timing, and of course, when I'm facing a masked hero deck, I don't want to wait for them to draw that mask change. So when I hit, I just do it. Like I think their back row is something that's not like a trick or something. So I don't do it enough. I guess I'm not cautious enough often.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to the point about understanding the meta and decks and stuff like that. And sometimes it's the right call to take that gamble, but sometimes it's not. And if you actually like sit down and consider like the odds of them having certain things, then sometimes you have to take the risk. But sometimes people just don't feel like doing that calculation, don't feel like figuring it out, and or just kind of have certain inclinations like you, where you just tend to work one certain way. And, it sometimes that will hurt your win rate a little bit. We're not all trying to compete at the very highest level, so it might hurt us like in very small amounts that aren't worth it for us to like just sit down and like actively calculate the best odds play for every single turn or something like that. But it is something to consider if you want to get better.
Yep. So these 5 key concepts we do agree with. It's a very good thing to know to get good at Duel Links.
Yep.
All right. Yep. So we have talked enough. Next week in Glorious Bastion, and then the Kaiba Cup. So we are set for a big week. Well, it's coming in the middle of the week, so I guess we have a few days to get King of Games.
Yep, hopefully.
Yep.
You have Monday off? I have Monday off. That'll be maybe some game time.
I took my 2 days off, so I'm not off Monday.
Oh, right. Well, okay.
That is it for us today. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for everyone who talked to us online. We talked to a lot of people online today. Thank you to Decade. Listen and subscribe to our podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, any source you want, Spotify. Check out the podcast and more on our website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com, Facebook, facebook.com/theduelassessment. If you want to help our efforts, Patreon, patreon.com/duel_assessment. Email us with any questions at theduelassessment@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter, duel_assessment, me at GreenRanger CCG, DeckTech at HS DeckTech.
Yep, we'll see you guys then.